Salut à tous, c'est Kylian. Voilà, je voulais m'adresser à vous. Depuis le temps, j'avais toujours dit que j'allais m'adresser à vous quand le moment serait venu. Et donc, je voulais vous annoncer à tous que voilà, c'est ma dernière année au Paris Saint-Germain. Je ne vais pas prolonger et je vais terminer mon aventure dans quelques semaines. Je vais jouer mon dernier match au Parc des Princes dimanche. C'est beaucoup d'émotions, beaucoup d'années où j'ai eu la chance et l'immense honneur de faire partie du plus grand club de France, l'un des meilleurs du monde, qui m'a permis d'arriver ici, de connaître ma première expérience dans un club avec beaucoup de pression, de grandir comme joueur, bien sûr, en côtoyant certains qui étaient les meilleurs de l'histoire, certains des grands champions, de côtoyer pas mal de gens, de grandir en tant qu'homme aussi, avec toute la gloire et les erreurs que j'ai pu faire. Je voudrais remercier tout d'abord, bien sûr, les coéquipiers, l'ensemble des coéquipiers que j'ai eus, l'ensemble des entraîneurs, Unai Emery, Thomas Tuchel, Mauricio Pochettino, Christophe Galtier et Luis Enrique, les directeurs sportifs, Leonardo et Luis Campos, de m'avoir toujours accompagné, l'ensemble des gens au club, ceux que les gens ne voient pas, les gens de l'ombre, que ce soit les kinés, les intendants, les gens de la performance, tous les gens dans les bureaux, au campus, tout le monde. Parce que voilà, il y a des personnes qui sont formidables, qui donnent tout pour le club et elles méritent d'avoir cette reconnaissance. Malgré tout ce qui peut se passer en dehors, tout ce nuage médiatique qui entoure parfois le club, il y a vraiment des amoureux du club qui veulent défendre et faire briller ce club et ça fait plaisir. Et je sais qu'avec toutes ces personnes, ce club il est entre de bonnes mains. C'est difficile. Je ne pensais pas que ça allait être aussi dur d'annoncer ça, de quitter mon pays, la France, la Ligue 1, un championnat que j'ai toujours connu. Mais je pense que j'avais besoin de ça, un nouveau challenge après 7 années. C'est difficile et bien sûr, il y a des gens que je voudrais remercier par-dessus tout, c'est les supporters. Je sais que je ne suis pas le joueur le plus démonstratif, je n'ai pas toujours été à la hauteur de l'amour que vous m'avez donné pendant 7 ans, mais j'ai jamais voulu tricher, j'ai toujours voulu être performant. Le PSG, c'est un club qui laisse personne indifférent. On peut aimer ou on peut détester, moi j'ai choisi de l'aimer et je l'ai fait pendant 7 ans, avec des hauts et des bas bien sûr, mais à aucun moment je regrette d'avoir signé dans ce club prestigieux. C'est un club que je vais garder dans ma mémoire toute ma vie. Je dirai à tout le monde toute ma vie que j'ai eu la chance de jouer ici. Et maintenant, je ne serai plus un joueur et je vais continuer à regarder tous les matchs, bien sûr, parce que c'est un club qui va toujours m'intéresser et je vais toujours m'intéresser de près à l'actualité du club. C'était moi, avec mes qualités et mes défauts, mais j'ai essayé de donner la meilleure version de moi-même pendant ces 7 ans. Mais avant tout, je veux vous dire merci parce que sans vous, j'aurais pas pu vivre la moitié de toutes les émotions que j'ai vécues. Et juste pour ça, je suis reconnaissant à vie. Donc, merci à tous. J'espère qu'on va finir cette année avec un dernier trophée. On va passer des bons moments pour ce qui reste. Mais sachez que vous resterez pour mon cœur pour la vie. Ici, c'est Paris et au revoir.
So folks, after years and seasons and transfer markets and everything that has gone on with Kylian Mbappe, today, well, maybe about an hour ago, a little less, a little more, he announced officially that he is departing from PSG. After almost 7 seasons over there, becomes the all-time leading goal scorer, becomes one of the most known footballers in the world, World Cup winner, doesn't really do it with the Champions League. Where does his legacy end at, or where does his legacy wind up in terms of what he's been able to accomplish with the Parisian side? That ends up being a multifaceted question that many might not have a clear answer. And, well, I include myself because there might not be a clear and concise answer because when it deals to talk about legacies of players, there's certain contexts that one has to deal with, and very unique contexts indeed, because when Kylian Mbappe, you talk about his legacy, it's one that has mixed emotions, and one has mixed reviews when it comes to what he has done. Of course, has led PSG to become one of the big names in world football. And he is one of those big names in world football. As I mentioned before, he also ends up winning a World Cup with France, was the star for France in 2018. And you know what? As a matter of fact, he put France in a position where they were on the precipice. They were very close on that edge to being able to repeat as champions in 2022. I mean, we end up being romanticized by the reasons in which Argentina were able to conquer their third World Cup. But France were very close, and France were very close for one reason and one reason only. Mbappe and what he was able to do in that latter stage of the match where they were basically done and dusted by the 75th, 80th minute of play. He gets a penalty, scores a couple of minutes later, he's able to get the equalizer, and it puts France back into the game. So he's had moments where he can be that difference maker, but he's also had moments where he needed to be the difference maker and he wasn't. Now, can he be the difference maker every time? No. And again, when you have a team like France that's solidified, that is a better collective as a national team, which is kind of unfair to always compare a club with a national team. It's kind of not a good argument, but it gives you a point in terms of the organization when it comes to when Mbappe was part of a team that's solid from back to front, that team that understood what they had to do, that you knew that everyone was willing to go and do the dirty work to be able to continue and get a victory. Of course, I mean, the biggest example of it all, Olivier Giroud going to the World Cup in 2018 as one of the goal-scoring options, if you want to call him that, and he doesn't score a goal, but yet his performance is hailed by many. So that ends up also being very important, knowing what you as a team have to do. PSG never knew what that team concept was. And when everything circled around Mbappe, you end up saying, hey, you know what? Well, he'll pull it through. But then also, I mean, it was interesting because we had this conversation on Tuesday when we were talking about the Champions League on Sportsmax, and we're talking about that. And, well, but he didn't have, I mean, I come up with a line, you know, I'm like, Eric, I mean, he didn't play for Scunthorpe. He played for PSG. He had players like Cavani, like Messi, Neymar, Verratti. I mean, just keep on. The list ends up being, even to now, there are some important players still at PSG, but the players that have come and the players that haven't succeeded at Di Maria, just to name you, Paredes, there's been a whole lot of them that have been there, and they have not been able to get the job done either. Dani Alves, those. I mean, I'll probably rattle them off as I continue to remember, because everything circled around him, and a lot of times it was to his benefit, but there were a lot of times it was to the detriment of the team. So it'll be interesting, maybe when we're a little bit further distanced from the entire situation, we're more on the periphery of what's gone on, that we will see we have a better measure for what Kylian Mbappe was able to mean to PSG. Now, like I said, there's many positives to that, but there have been also many negatives, and the biggest negative of it all happens to be the one that, well, he didn't win a Champions League with PSG. Now, where he goes, most likely Real Madrid. Will he win one? Got a good chance. I can't say he will, but he's got a much better chance. He's got a much better inclination to do so, because now he ends up being a very sought-after commodity. But then the biggest question of it all, of all of this drama, of all of this huge soap opera that's been years in the making, is how does he fit in? How would he fit in? Let's talk about Real Madrid. We can even talk about Manchester City. He comes in as the biggest fish in a smaller pond, and the big fish by a lot. I mean, he's a shark in a lake, if you want to call him that, or a whale in a lake. But how does he end up fitting into a dressing room that maybe is already established, it's already consolidated? How do you end up fitting in? You can't go and say, hey, I'm the boss on this team. You can't. Especially, let's say Real Madrid win the Champions League, and then he comes in, and then maybe you have an Alphonso Davies come in and add that to a dressing room. Well, it's, hey, by the way, you are this piece in the cog, and you fit in such a way. Will he be willing to accept that? That's where this portion of his career ends up being interesting. Can he be willing enough in a big dressing room at a big club, at a bigger club? I mean, PSG fans will get mad at me, but there's no way you can compare PSG to Real Madrid. It's comparing a Ferrari to a bike. I'm sorry. So, when you start seeing all of this, this is where we end up really analyzing all of what Kylian Mbappe meant to PSG and what he is going to end up meaning, because now the conversation shifts there. Maybe when we sit back and we start having a couple of beers, a couple of coffees, and start discussing football past or recent past, that topic will come up, and many of us will have completely different views in terms of what he's meant to football and to Paris Saint-Germain, what he's meant to that club. We might agree, we might disagree. I might even have some of you completely disagreeing, saying, what are you talking about? You don't know, you don't have a clue what you're saying. But you know what? Real is real. You have to look at everything from both sides, because he was an absolute dominant force in Ligue 1, but Ligue 1 wasn't the measuring stick. It never was for PSG. That's basically a given. The year that they didn't win the league, it was a complete disaster because Lille was able to beat them. When Monaco won it a few years before that, it ended up being a disaster. When teams have come in and snuck in and been able to chop up that dominance of PSG, it's been disastrous for them. And for that project that the brass, the Nasser Al-Khelaifi and company have looked to establish at PSG, because they bought for the sake of buying, not buying for the sake of building. I hope that makes sense. But buying for the sake of building a conglomerate of players, instead of trying to see where X or Y player fits in, even Messi at that point. But at that point, I can't blame them, because if he's there and you can take him, why not? Thing is that you bought him with the purpose of just putting him in there, and you never really established a position for him, and you never gave a player like that a sense of comfort. But that's for a future video. So with all that being said, we see that he's leaving. Most likely it'll be Madrid. All signs point that it's Madrid. And what ends up being so compelling is that a new drama builds up. And you know what? There is a huge possibility, a huge one, that he might not be the number one star in that dressing room. How will he behave when that ends up happening? If that ends up happening. And how will he try and adjust in order to become either the number one or become yet another teammate that's looking to find a common goal? Let me know what you think. Let me know how you think. Let me know what you have in mind. Let me know other things that I could start doing for other videos, because I really want to start working it really hard and working it really well here to be able to offer you a different perspective, a different vantage point that could be extremely vital, not only for myself, but also for you, for me to express it and for you to answer back, and I better understand that in certain platforms it doesn't work out that way, or it works out as clearly as it does here. All right, talk to you later, guys.